So I thought we'd do a little video on us fitting a tow bar to our Rover 45. It can't really be a how-to because all tow bar kits are probably different, so it's more of a visual reference and a record of how we fitted this kit. And actually it's a really nice kit. As you can see, we've laid it all out, and you get more or less everything. It came with the actual tow ball, the cover, we've got all the electrics, we've got a basic little indicator buzzer. Now we may change that for one of these smart relays that doesn't put so much load on the system, but we'll have to see. Of course, it comes with all the bolts, the fixings, the metal plates that go in the boot, and we'll show you how all this comes together. But it's actually a really strongly nice built tow bar, and it's powder coated as well, so we're not even going to have to paint it. So I just thought I'd show you basically what comes in the kit, which is everything you needed really. So yeah, as I was saying, it seems to be a really nice kit. Obviously I have to see how it's fitted. The kit we got was from eBay, and yeah, what we've done, we've put some of the bolts in, but it appears to come with all the bolts that you need. And even this is not hollow, that's a solid bit of metal. So yeah, it actually seems a lot more heavier built than the tow bars we've fitted before to our Metros. And as I said, this is not one we've done before, the 45, but we'll show you the process that we follow to just give you sort of, as I say, a visual reference of fitting a tow bar to a 45 and using this particular kit, which I suppose is kind of a budget kit that comes with everything. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is remove the bumper. Actually, there isn't too many fixings on this bumper. You've got these set of plastic screws along the top. And if I come down to the underneath of the bumper, the next two fixing points is a plastic screw on this side, and come across past the jack handle. There's another plastic screw on that side. And then if we slide right under the car and up under the wheel arch, and you should be able to see, if I just point with that torch, there's a little bolt there, and that's bolted into the side of the bumper. There's like a little metal bracket, and this bolt holds it on just by the rear wheel arch, and there's one each side the car. It might be easier for you to get into it from the wheel arch, but as we've got the car jacked up, we've accessed it from there. So as I said, not too much actually holding the bumper on, so we're going to do those. Right, so to make it easier for us to gain access to this bolt on the side of the bumper in the rear wheel arch, we've taken the wheel off, and it's also going to let us get the camera in a bit better so you can see us undoing it. There it is, and it's just a case of removing it. And this one on each side, they're both the only two metal bolts. The other fixings are those plastic screws, which we'll show you coming out very shortly. Right, so on the other side under the wheel arch, what you might find is that you've got a plastic shield here that will need removing to get that same bolt out. There's two little fixings low down and one high up, and basically it goes over the fuel pipe. But you might find that this isn't there on some 45, so it won't be an issue. I just thought I'd give you a better view of that plastic guard or inner wheel lining that goes over the fuel pipe, just so you can see it better out here from the wheel arch. There's actually 4 fixing points we found. There's one there, one there, one in there, and one right down in there. It's just a case of getting these 4 plastic fittings or plastic screws out here. Although they've got little screws in the top, you may find, like we found, that they just need popping out because that screw just won't undo. And we're using this little trim tool just to do that, as you can see. That's the bumper more or less loose. It's just a case of getting the bottom ones out from underneath. They're a similar process and a similar screw, so it's a bit difficult to show you that. So I'll let you see that's how we've done it up here, is how we've tackled the 2 plastic fixings underneath. Right, so now the bumper's off, the next thing you need to do with this tow bar fitting kit is to remove these, what we call little impact beams or bars, and they're basically bolted on each side, and I think they collapse slightly behind the bumper, but the tow bar goes into these beams. So the first thing you need to do is remove them. So we've got one of them each side with 2 bolts on each, so we're going to remove them next. So just thought I'd give you a better look at these bumper ends, or kind of impact little beams that we unbolted in a bit better light, and they had 2 bolts in them, although there's 4 holes. And I think really what they are is that they sit behind the bumper, and in a very small impact, you can see these little creases here. They would sort of crease up, but I'm not sure they would do that much good, and they're not needed now because the tow bars we show you later goes through into the chassis where these once sit, so they get removed. So I thought I'd give you just a better view in a better light, and we've removed them on both sides. Also, while we're in better light, I thought I'd just give you a better look at the bumper we've removed from the inside, just to show you those fixing points. Of course, you had the ones along the top of the bumper, those plastic screws. This is from the back side. The 2 mounting points on the underneath of the bumper, and they stick out here and here, and from what we understand, that we may have to cut this bumper around the point where this V is, so we'll show you that later. The other fixing points were really awkward to get to, were these ones that sit under the back wheel arch on the bumper, and what we've done on this bumper quite a time ago now is we actually repaired this, and it's one of the things you might find on your bumper is this plastic here becomes weak, and what we've done is put in a metal T-bracket just to strengthen that on both sides. I say that's quite a time ago we did that, and what we do, we clean this bumper up before it goes back. As I thought I'd just give you another little look in a better light from the back side, so you can see the back of the bumper and where those fixing points were. I said not many really, it's quite surprising, very little actually holds the back bumper on, but they are those fixing points. Just to give you a progress update of the stage we're at now. So we've removed those 2 little metal impact beams that I've just showed you, so you can now see down into the chassis rail on the back, and that's the same both sides. We've cleared out some of the boot, we've completely cleared that out in a minute, so we can do it. And as you can see here, you can actually see that chassis rail from the top in the moulding, and we've pulled out a little grommet there to look down into it, which is where the fixing points are going to come through, and there's some other bits as well, so we'll show you that as it goes on. But I just thought I'd show you so far where we're at with the bumper removed and those little chassis rails removed. What we do here is where the paint's kind of missing and there's some rust, we'll put some rust stuff and paint that in to protect that as well. What we've done to give us a little bit more space is we've removed the carpet linings both sides, and they consist of those little pushing plastic clips. There's a couple of them on this side, which you'll clearly see when you come to remove the carpets, and on this side the only difference is on the driver's side, and it's not on all cars, but this one had like a little tie down strap for tying down a first aid kit or a warning triangle, anything you want to, and you just have to remove that, and this clip is behind. So what we're doing at the moment is just lining everything up. So we've put in this first bracket that goes into the main chassis, and you'll have one of those each side, and then using their measurements we've lined that up with this top plate, and they are handed those plates and they weren't marked, so we've had to sort out the left and right hand plates. We've marked, as you can see there, across one of the holes we're going to have to drill, but what you have to do is remove this sort of sound deadening insulation like tar stuff, because otherwise when you bolt this down it would squash into this, and then over time this would squash down and could make the bracket loose. So what we've done is draw around the bracket, and then we'll have to try and sort of chisel this rubber tar insulation out. So that's at the stage we are. We've got them marked both sides, and here again you can see we've marked the holes and drawn round it ready for us to remove that tar, and so all the measurements for that are in the instructions, and that will probably alter on depending on the towbar kit you've got, but that's the stage we're at the moment. Right, so what we've done now is put a little punch mark in the holes that we're going to drill, and that's on both sides of the car. And what we're going to do is drill a little pilot hole first, check it lines up from the bracket underneath to this bracket on top, and then drill the full hole from there. Now, interestingly enough, the hole size they recommend is 11mm, and in our drill set we didn't have that, so we've had to go on and buy some 11mm drill. For some reason a lot of drill kits don't seem to have 11mm in, so that's certainly well worth checking. Once we've drilled the hole, what we do is then bolt this bracket down through those two holes that we're going to drill, and that will then effectively give us the template for these other 4 holes there. And what happens is that these plates go on underneath, so you've got a plate this side and this side, they will go on underneath and sandwich the body of the car between this top bracket and this bottom bracket, whilst bolting through on the 2 holes we're about to drill onto this main steel member that goes through the chassis. And just to let you have a little quick look, this is the instructions that came with the towbar. Not really a lot, but they give you enough to give you an idea of what you need to do. It's just a case of, as we laid it all out and figure it out, and then like we're going to do, drill some pilot holes first, check it lines up before we drill any main holes. And there's that sort of expanding diagram which you can hopefully get straight in your mind with what I showed you laid out on the table, and how it lays out and how we're trying to explain it to you. So before we drill any other holes, even the other hole up here, with this first pilot hole, we've now drilled that, as you see, and what we've done is stuck that pilot drill through and check it goes through into the hole of the bracket, which it does. And as you can see there, the bracket looks like it's sitting roughly in the right position, so that gives us a good idea before we drill any other holes we're on the right course, we've got the measurements right, and we're understanding roughly what the instructions are saying is working out as we think it should do. So now we've checked that pilot hole lines up, we're now going to drill the full size hole. So we've now bolted that top bracket through that test hole down to the bracket that goes through the chassis, and that gives us a good idea that that bracket is likely to line up. We're now going to do the same on the other side, just drill one hole and get that top bracket mounted and bolted through to that rail that goes through the chassis, and then we'll be able to check that the main bar that goes along this back here lines up, and that's all before we drill any other holes. And that's not quite what the instructions say, that's the cautious approach we're taking, just to make sure that everything does line up before you end up drilling lots of wrong holes in the boot floor, which you really don't want to do. Checking the measurements, and just to show you that when we initially lined that bracket up, we measured from this piece of metal sticking out to that mounting point, and we also checked that this bump in the floor was going to line up, and now we've got both of them bolted in on just the one hole to check that everything lines up. We've also measured how much these brackets stick out of the chassis and check that's even each side as well, just to give us a secondary check that it is lining up roughly right. So now with our test bolt, or just the first hole, drilled and bolted on both sides and attached through the floor and into the chassis rail to this bracket here and this bracket here, and they're handed as well, so you want to make sure that it's that way round. What we've then done is temporarily, just again with one bolt each side, put the back cross beam on, and that again just gives us an indication that it is all lining up before you drill any other bolts, because if you bolted it all in and found that the gap was too small to fit this in, then you would have a little bit of a problem. What it's also done is made sure that this bracket sitting in the chassis is sitting right and not over to one way or the other, because again this main crossbar wouldn't then fit into that gap. And the other thing that's good is that this little bracket here is lining up, this hole here is lining up with the originally pre-drilled hole in this chassis, and that's happening on both sides. So again, that's giving us another good indication that it's all lining up, and we can now go on to drilling the other holes. What we're first going to do is drill the second main hole and put it into that under cross beam on both sides, and then again once that's lined up, we'll then be drilling the outside 4 holes ready to put those brackets on underneath. So that's the next things we're going to be doing. So that's now both the main 2 bolts in both sides, and just that one to fully do up. What we're now going to do, knowing that it's all lined up, and this was probably the more difficult bit we know is dealt with now that it should be lining up, is to just drill the remaining 4 holes on both sides ready to bolt them up to those under brackets that I showed you earlier. But once we've drilled those holes, what we'll be doing is taking this all off, taking it out, and then removing this insulation tar stuff before we then put it all back together for the final time. So we've now drilled the other 4 holes and removed all of the sort of insulation sound deadening on this one, so that bracket can fit in without being affected. On this side, well, we've just got the holes drilled, and all we've got to do now is remove all that sound insulation, sound deadening on that side. So now the insulation and sound deadening has been removed from both sides. What we're going to do is just paint that and seal the holes to make sure that no sort of rust can set in once the plates are put over that area. So now we've painted that area just to make sure it's sealed and to stop any rust setting in, and we're painting that side at the moment, and it'll be a case of leaving that to tomorrow where we can carry on with fitting the tow bar. So it's a day or so later, and we've put a couple of coats of paint on these back chassis rails where of course the tow bar frame slots into on both sides, and the same up here on top where we removed all the insulation for the brackets to go. So now it's a case of putting the tow bar structure back in for the final time with all that metal work protected and painted now. Right, so that's the last bolt into the plates that bolt through into the cross members. As you see, we put a little bit of copper slip on each of the bolts as well, but they're not done up tightly as we need flexibility for putting the cross beam in and also the plates underneath, and then we will do them up to the specific torque settings that are recommended in the instructions that come with the tow bar. Right, so now the cross member is going back in. We just put one bolt in each side at the moment just to hold it steady, because what we've next got to do is put in the bolt that goes from this bracket through into the body, which is one of the holes where those little crush members sat behind the bumper, and there's a spacer that comes with that. Yeah, so we're going to put that back in again, leaving all the bolts loose to give us that flexibility before we do them up to torque settings. The next bit we'll be doing is putting in those little plates that go underneath and bolt up into the top plates, which are up here. Right, so we're now underneath the car. We're putting on those brackets that bolt through to the top bracket, and you can see that chassis beam there. One bracket is already on the far side, and this is the smaller bracket going on, so it's just a case of putting the nuts on the end of those bolts, and you roughly where it was and what it's like to do. Right, so from the passenger side of the car, they are the two brackets now in. Hopefully you can see either side of that chassis rail. Now, unlike the beam that goes inside the chassis rail where the nuts are welded to it, these aren't, so it probably needs someone at the top holding the top of the bolt, while a second person, which is what we did, does up the nuts at the bottom. Again, we're keeping them loose and only doing all the sort of torque settings once everything's done. And if we come over the driver's side, of course you've got the exhaust in the way, so what we're going to have to do there is jack the car up. We've already removed this rubber bracket, that's not bringing the exhaust low enough, so we'll jack it up and remove one of the other rubber mountings or brackets that hold the exhaust on to lower it down, so we can do those two brackets up this side. Just to let you know where we've got so far, we've got the bolt here in, the second bolt there in, and the third bolt here in, and they're going into this rail that goes into the chassis, and that's done both sides. Then up here we've got this bracket on, and these two bolts go through into this main structural rail that goes through the chassis, and then these bolts here, here and here go through into those brackets that I showed you underneath, those sort of long metal brackets there. And that's the same this side. We've done exactly the same this side. We've had the exhaust down and got those brackets on underneath as well. So the next thing will be to do is to then, once you're sure it's all fitting all right, do up the bolts to the specified torque setting. And I just thought if we come down here before we put the exhaust back, I'll just show you how the brackets are fixed and mounted just under the exhaust each side of that chassis rail on the driver's side. Now everything's in place, we're just going to tighten these bolts up to just roughly tight, ready for us to do them to the correct torque settings. And as I said before, with these bolts that go through each side to the under brackets, it's probably best to have two of you, and I'm just going to hold this bolt at the top so we can get the nuts tight from underneath. And we'll just do that on all of them so they're ready for us to do the torque settings. So all the bolts are tightened up and our main frame is now all in place, and basically all we need to do now is just do the bolts up to the specified torque setting. Yes, all we'll do now is just continue round and torque the rest of the bolts up right across the tow bar on both sides of the frame. Right, so we've now put the last part of the sort of bracket in kit of the tow bar together, which is this last little bit here bolted on with those two bolts down there. And what we're also doing is putting the tow ball wiring part of the kit together. It just comes with a standard plug on a standard sort of bracket, and what we've done is on the instructions it sort of implied drilling a hole somewhere through here, but what we found is there was a sort of grommeted hole this side of the bumper, and this side, so what we've done is remove that and put our own grommet in there that can take a wire through, so we don't have to drill any holes in the or any extra holes in the body of the car. And then we found it will come out through this little gap here, and then that lets us get access to the wiring this side, and any wires that have to come across to this side we can do. Right, so as you see earlier, we've torqued up all the bolts. The last two to do are on this last bit of the bracket we've just fitted. And that's the last bit, just putting the actual tow ball onto the tow bar kit with the little wiring harness bracket to the side ready for your trailer to be plugged in. Right, so I thought I'd just do another little progress update. More or less the main tow bar is fitted. It's all torqued up. We've got the cable all tied and coming through. Of course, all the brackets there are torqued up as well. So really all that's left to do now is to cut the bumper so it fits over, and of course do the wiring where we will be wiring into the loom for the all the indicators and side lights. So I'll just pan back, that just gives you a nice view of the tow bar bracket on the back of the car and how it sits finished before the bumper goes on. Right, so now we've got all the tow bar fitted to the car, it's time to cut the bumper. Now the instructions actually implied in order of things to cut this first, but we've left it right to the end to make sure it definitely lines up. What we've done is marked out their measurements, and we think we may have to cut it all the way out to there, but initially we're only going to cut it to around about here, put it on and try it, because it's better to cut a small hole and have to make it bigger than have too big a hole, and then hopefully it'll look as neat as possible. What we've just done is quickly test fitted the bumper and then put marks here roughly where the tow bar sits to make sure that it is roughly lining up with our measurements from the instructions, which it is, and it does sit slightly offset to this little dip in the bumper, which is there for the original towing hook. So that's what we're doing, cutting out that initial hole and then test fitting it and seeing if we need to cut any more away of the bumper. Right, so we're now all ready to cut. We've got all the markings set out, and what we're going to do is use a hole cutter to initially cut the hole and then cut this bit out straight afterwards. So while the bumper's being cut, I'm just going to clean off any of this dirt and little bits of mildew growing there before we put the bumper back, and that'll just also put a bit of a protective wax on the bodywork, just using a bit of spray and shine. So that's it, just a little bit cleaner and protected with some wax polish before we put the bumper back. So that's the initial slot cut out. What we'll now do is do a test fit and see whether any more needs cutting out to get the bumper to sit just right. Right, so we're just doing a test fit at the moment, and what we're finding is these holes up here, the bumper isn't sitting quite right, and when you get down here there's slightly more needs coming off this side. We cut it really dead to the size, if not slightly smaller, so we could cut more. So that's what we have to do, I have to trim that side off, but the height is exactly right. So it's just a case of doing a little bit of trim and then it should then drop down and fit. Right, so we've laid the bumper across the top of the boot, and what we're going to do then is just cut this little sliver of plastic off so it fits. As I say, we were doing it a bit tight to the measurements, and even the picture did show a little bit more off, although the picture really wasn't that great. So considering that's not too bad. What we are glad about is we haven't got all of the height here, otherwise it really would have started to have shown, so we are pleased about that. Right, so that's the bumper fitted. After cutting that extra little sliver of plastic, just gives us that extra bit of space and allows the bumper to sit right. So it really is just doing the electrics now. Right, so as you've seen, the tow bar itself is fitted, and the last thing to do is the wiring of the tow bar. Now, every car's colour coding and wiring is going to be different, and every relay kit may have slight differences as well. So I think rather than literally going into which colours are going where, we just show you how we've done it, and it's probably a lot easier and simpler to follow the wiring diagrams for your particular car, because even the 45s I think have got differences, and if it's a 400 differences again, and whatever relay system you buy for your 45 is going to be different. Well, the kit we got, the tow bar kit, as I said, came with this little teeny small buzzer relay, which really just takes feeds from the indicators and runs them through this, so this buzzes. The rest of the lighting is just directly wired, which is okay for the 45, as there's no sort of K-bus or computerization that does bulb sensing. If your car has got that, you can buy one of these sorts of relays, and that's what we've done, because they can be used on a car even if it hasn't got any sort of K-bus or sensing for bulbs. And the reason we picked to use this particular one is because what you do with this, you run this with a mains feed, then you connect all like your stop lights and indicators into this, and they purely become signal wires. So when you indicate, the signal goes to this, and this then brings in a relay which then activates the indicators on your trailer, but supplied from the separate mains feed from the battery that you sent it. I mean, it doesn't interfere at all with your lighting, which we preferred. You can get these online. I'll just show you what's written on it, so you can search for that. It's a 7-way universal relay bypass. The only thing we're going to change with that is it comes with this very basic fuse. That's for your mains feed back to the battery, almost like a Scotch lock, and we're going to get a proper inline fuse. So we'll put that over there with that relay we're now not going to use. And what I'll do is show you where we've mounted it and how the wires go in. But as I say, I think, you know, for purposes of getting it right, it's better that you follow the instructions that comes with your relay, like we've got with this relay, and also check the instructions or wiring diagrams for your particular 45, because I think there could be differences 3 times throughout the years of the 45 and the 400. Again, I would imagine there will be little differences as well. But I just thought I'd show you what we were going to be using and why we were going to be using it. And as we've just been talking about the relays and buzzer unit we're going to be using, I just thought I'd reconfirm the back. This is the 12N socket we've come with the kit, and we've also put a 12S socket in as well, which obviously you don't need to. And as I showed you before, they come through the body and they come out just through this little hole there, so we haven't had to do any drilling, but we showed you that earlier on. So each wire comes at each side, and you could bring yours through whichever side you wanted, and then we'll be ready to wire them in. The good thing with the kit we bought is that this plug down here was all pre-wired, so if you get a kit, and I think they even sell them on eBay like that, even if you're not buying a tow bar, it's a lot easier. It's all pre-wired and done for you, and all you've got to do is wire in your end there. Right, so just to keep you up to date with the wiring of this tow bar job, we've put the wiring from the plug on the back of the tow bar in the relevant screw holes, and the wiring that comes out is yet to go in the loom, but this requires a mains wire from the battery, and that's the bit we do. So if I go around to the front of the car, I'll just show you how we're doing that. So we're now around the front of the car, and you'll recognise this as the main fuse box, and the lid can come off like that. And what we do, we take you backwards to the back of the car, how these wires are going. And if I pull this just out the way, you'll see that down there's a grommet through the bulkhead into the passenger footwell just behind the heater system, the blow heater. And what we've done is pulled that grommet back and then took our wires through there. We're doing 2 wires. There's one's to power the new relay and one is to go to the secondary plug, so that's there. Although we don't need that, that's there, so you can power 12 volts to something like a caravan. We're just wiring that in because we can at the moment, and that's the orange and the purple wire, so they come through that grommet there. And then what we're going to do is there's actually a blanking hole on this fuse box and a point there, and we're going to connect them into that point there, because this wire runs all the way back to the battery in here. So instead of running our wires under this tube and clamping them on there, which always looks messy, they will go into the main point in the fuse box. We're now inside the passenger footwell, and you can see there the purple and the orange wire are coming out of the bulkhead and through the insulation. I'll now just pull you back to give you a rough idea where you are. There you are, you can see the glove box off and the fan motors. Those leads are there at the moment. What we do then is run them under this carpet. We've removed the plastic trim that's there, and then they will come down through here, and we'll show you that once we've done that. As we continue to run the wire to the back of the car, we've removed the middle pillar there, the plastic shielding, and of course we've moved the plates the door tread plates that go along the bottom, and that's allowed us to then pull this carpet back in the back and bring the wiring all the way under the carpet. And then what we've been able to do, lucky enough, is because this panel is all part of the boot, this bit here, we've just unscrewed this and just pulled it back, and that's allowed us to then bring the wiring along with the main loom all the way along and through into the boot, where it then comes through from where I've just shown you along the boot, where the boot carpet goes, all the way up to the relay which it will power, and of course the other wire will go straight to the plug for the 12-volt supply. So we're now connecting the relay into the loom, so I just thought I'd show you that stage. This is the loom on the passenger side of the car, and as well as following the wiring diagram, what we've also done to make sure that diagram is right is check that these wires are the right wires. We've done that by getting out the back of the light, and this is where the plug goes in, but you can actually follow through and trace where the wiring go just to make sure, and that's a good idea. Actually, this is a nice easy one to do, as the back of the light just unplugs and you can see all the wiring and where it goes to the bulbs. What we're doing is we're soldering the wiring into the loom. So in this case, this red wire is being spliced into the black wire going off to the relay. We've got it all twisted there and ready to solder. Then we're pulling a bit of heat shrink over to seal that, but what we're also doing then is putting some insulation tape to make doubly sure that's sealed and the wires are stuck so they couldn't easily be pulled out. And then we're just warming up the heat shrink, as you can see there, so it shrinks on. What we've also got to do is of course attach the wiring to the other side of the loom, because the side lights are done independently and we're going to take it with left and right side lights, and also of course the indicators, and we're just going to use this trunking and run it along the back of the boot. What we've done now, just want to show you that, is we've wrote out all our wiring colouring. That's how, as I said earlier, we've checked it all. What we've done is got a wiring diagram, then we've written it out in something that makes sense to us, and then check those colour codings do actually match up with the wires on the car, because you don't want to be connecting the wrong wires in and find out afterwards. So the best thing to do is just double check it as much as you can. So as you can see now, the heat shrink is on that wire, and then we just put a bit of insulation tape around it just to make sure. So now we've shown you where the wire goes to the back of the boot, and that's now connected in to the smart relay. I thought I'd just bring you back here to show you how we've connected it in. We've got the two inline fuses that we bought, so we weren't that keen on the inline fuse that the kit provided, and they're nice and sealed. And then what we've done is we have opened up that little blanking plate hole, put a grommet in there, and the wires connect directly into that mains feed. So effectively it's like them being connected to the battery. We've got it disconnected at the moment, only they're connected at the other end of this mains lead instead of at the battery end, which keeps it all nice and neat in the fuse box. As I say, there's two wires, because one's to power the smart relay and the other one is for a 12-volt supply. Like if you were to connect a caravan up to this towbar, then that 12-volt supply would work through the second like accessory socket. So yeah, that's the wires all linked in. What we've done at the moment is just left the fuses out of these so they're not connected while we're doing all the wiring, then that'll be the last thing to do, put those fuses in. So we've now accessed the loom on the other side of the car, the driver's side, as you can see, and connected in the wires which then run right along the back of the boot. and as you can see then join up and go into a smart relay. So all the wiring in the back is done now. All the links are linked in from the loom into the smart relay, so that is more or less now the wiring job done. It's just a case of putting the carpets back and getting the boot all back tidy, and of course then it'll be a case of just testing the wiring to check there's no problems. Right, so I thought I'd just come and sit inside our Rover 45, as that's the job done. The tow bar's fitted, we've done the wiring. Hopefully we've managed to cover everything. What we tried to do was concentrate mainly on the fitting of the tow bar and just give you a rough idea of the wiring, as I think there are slight wiring differences on 45s depending on the year, and also it depends whether you use the basic relay that comes with the kit like ours did, or you buy a smart relay like we did. But as I say, it gives you a visual reference, which is what we always try and do. They're not really how-tos, but hopefully if you're going to fit it and you've read through the instructions, perhaps watch other videos, this gives you a real sort of detailed visual reference of what's involved in fitting a tow bar. Might give you some ideas and tips when you come to do it yourself. As always, don't forget to check out the rest of our videos. I'm doing regular videos on work we do on our Rover 45s, our 75s and our Metros. Of course, don't forget to check out our Twitter and Instagram pages. Links are on our YouTube homepage if you want to go to them. I'm regularly posting pictures of our cars when they're out and about, and also some of the work we do on them. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the video, give it a like as well. As always, thank you very much for watching.